Anybody out there get calls from God that you can give them a little bit of counsel? Guess what? He doesn't need a counselor. He has Jesus. He has Jesus, who understands what it means to live in the flesh. That's what we celebrate every Sunday morning, remember? Okay? So he doesn't need us to have it figured out so we can tell him what we think. Right? And here's what else he doesn't need. Who has ever given to God that God should pay him back, repay him? Right? Is God into you for anything? You guys have, he owes me, I just lend him a little bit. I got to help God out here. I'm going to fork out. No. Everything you have comes from God. Everything you see belongs to God. Who needs to pay God? Who needs to lend him a few rubles? Then he goes on, he says, well, this is what bugs me, okay? I was at this group one time. This guy was making these very, actually they were anti-homosexual statements in a religious context. Because he was just sure that God can't stand people who are homosexuals. He was just positive that was the case. And he felt very arrogant about the whole thing. And he was talking to the teacher, who I have a lot of respect for. And they said, well, don't you think in the eyes of God... And the guy stopped him there and said, you know what? You're on pretty shaky ground when you're talking about the eyes of God. Because I don't have them. And you don't have them. And you sure don't know what things look like to God. But what about those who have the mind of God? I think God thinks this way. Guess what? His thoughts are above your thoughts as the heavens are above the earth. Yeah. You don't think like God. And thank God, God does not think like you. God is holy. And we are here every Sunday to acknowledge that God is God and we're not. Because we just can't play that role. It's tempting sometimes. So when he says, who has known the mind of the Lord? Who has known? Well, this is only fair, God. This isn't fair. Right, let me give you a little counsel about what's fair, God. God is God. And we're not. And because of that, we study praise. Acknowledging that God is God and we're not. His thoughts are different than our thoughts. His ways are different. He sees things differently. He is holy, 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 holy. Literally different. Not like us. And that is where we need to stand. When we deal with each other, when we deal with decisions in our lives, when we deal with our family, we need to stand on the fact that God is God and we're not. And we don't want Him to be like us. Now, in chapter 12, he's going to talk about learning to approve His good will. It's good, and actually says it down here. He says, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed in the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. We'll talk about that next week. You have to come back. Okay? Amen. But right now, at the end of chapter 11, you need to study praise. Because God is God. And even if you think you've got all this figured out, even if you think you know the mind of Paul, God is God, Paul's not. Let me say that again. God is God, Paul is not. If anything leads you to believe you can think like your Creator thinks, you are in dangerous waters. Okay? We thank God every Sunday that Jesus came to live in the flesh, to know what our life is like. We thank God every Sunday. We celebrate it every Sunday. And we're going to do it again this morning. We did it on Christmas Eve. That fleshes out for us in knowing that we're not God. God understands us. God accepts us. God, it says up here, He says, He's bound all men over to disobedience so that he might have mercy on all of us. You have been bound over to disobedience. Did you know that? There is no way you deserve to sit here and call yourself a brother or sister of Christ. You don't deserve it. That's the end of the story. God has had mercy on all of us. And He said, you know what? You're in anyway. You're okay with me anyway. As long as you don't get the big head. As long as you don't think you're better than somebody else. You're okay. As long as you don't compare yourself to somebody else, you're okay. As long as you can remember what we're doing on Sunday morning, it's for everybody. Not just a select few, not the people of social economic status that you are, not people of the same nationality, not the people of ethnic background. As long as you understand that, you're okay. And you can stand at the foot of the throne and say, I'm so glad that you are holy. That you are God and I am not. This morning we're going to sing an invitation song, number 484. And as we do, we're going to ask if there's any way we can help you as a congregation. We're going to sing verses 1 and 3. If there's some way we can help you in your spiritual life, if there's something specifically you need to be prayed for, if you want to study about what it means to become a Christian, if you want to ask for prayers about something specific, we give you this opportunity. And you know what? We have a lot of phone numbers. We have email addresses. We have a lot of people to be willing to talk to you, help any way they can, any time of the week. But we have a special time now. We're going to stand and sing, We've a Story to Tell the Nations. And you can come and make your request known as we stand and sing.